Welcome to another edition of the 1% Better podcast with your host, Rob O'Donoghue.
Hello there. Welcome to the podcast. So in the last few weeks I've changed. As I mentioned a few weeks ago, I was going to retitle things, and it's now, you might see, Rob of the Green Presents. And under that umbrella, we have the 1% Better podcast. We have the book club, which is going from strength to strength. And we have that mini-series, Me, Myself and EI, which I do plan to release more on. But when you put them all together, this is now episode 200 of all the things I've released. And that is pretty cool. Delighted to hit the milestone, but I don't like over-celebrating things because it's, at the end of the day, just another episode. And I'm moving on to the next one after this one. So I don't want to go more than just say thanks to everybody that's listening, continues to do so. I'd be surprised if anyone listens to all 200, but if you have, let me know. And those that are listening in Lithuania and Panama and strange places like that I see on a regular basis that the podcast gets charted in those countries, which is always fascinating to see. Welcome. Thank you for listening as well. But to everybody in Ireland, in the US or wherever, thanks again so much, and keep at it and keep listening to all podcasts because there's so much to learn from them. I learned from every episode, and this one was none different with Allison Kreiger Walsh. Lots of fascinating insights from her journey, not only as a baton thrower, but as Miss Florida and in her current role. What a inspiring lady. Lots of really insightful nuggets she shares, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it as well. So there you go, short intro, 200 not out. Here's to another 200 over the next 4, 5, 10 years, whatever it might take. But we'll keep going and keep enjoying it, and I hope you do too. Have a great week and take care. Talk to you soon. Good luck. Hi folks, welcome to another 1% Better podcast episode, and this time I am jumping over the pond again. I think my last probably 5 guests have been in the US. I think that's something, I don't know if I should maybe move to the US and set up over there instead, but I'm delighted to introduce Allison Kreiger Walsh to the podcast tonight. Allison, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Delighted to have you on the show, and you have a number of titles after your name. You're a speaker, an author, a founder, a marketing expert. You have a president of a non-profit organization and a podcast as well, and also a coach. And I think I better stop there, or it'll just kind of keep running out of names. But I like sometimes to ask, of all of those titles, which one is the most important for you? What stands out the most for you?
I mean, for me, I think the coach aspect runs through everything that I do, right? So whether I'm working with my team, right? I run a national business development team for a healthcare company, or I'm working with clients one-on-one, or I'm helping empower other people. I'm always coaching. It's been something that I've loved doing. I've done it for a long time in a lot of different capacities, and I find great joy in that. And I love helping people become the best versions of themselves, whatever it is that they're striving for, whether it's in their career, in their life, with their health, right? Because of what we do. So a lot of that all boils down to coach. It's that underlying theme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more from a coaching perspective. It's what I love to do most as well. And in many ways, I see these interviews, in some ways, they're like coaching sessions, but helping others as well. You're kind of giving it, paying it forward or paying it back, whatever way you want to look at it. Where did that come from for you? Where did that passion to help others originate, do you think? Have you reflected on that? I'm assuming as a coach, you do a lot of self-reflection, so you probably did.
Yeah, so I grew up as a competitive athlete. And so, I always appreciated constructive feedback so that I could be the best version of me and I could show up and perform and do what I needed to do so I could win, right? Like very driven. But then as I really evolved and in my career and my professional life, I, really looked towards others to help me continue to level up. And I realized how important it was that no matter if I was done with school or I was done, quote unquote, with whatever I was working on, that you're really never done. And so always looking for opportunities to learn and grow was very important to me. And so, it really started at a young age, and then helping others, right? Really, in what I do now, I started a nonprofit when I was 18 years old with the intention of helping people get through really terrible times in their lives and become well again. And so that whole journey, right? And I ran that nonprofit for 18 years. It was incredible to be able to walk alongside somebody in some of their darkest times and get them through to the other side, and to realize how impactful that can be, and how fulfilling it is for me too, to watch somebody really change their lives, and taking some of those core concepts and translating that into what I do on a daily basis has been really special.
Mm-hmm. I guess when I kind of started my own deep self-reflection journey and came out the other side in a positive way and wanted to help and coach people more than ever, I think coming out afterwards, I probably went through things in the past when I was younger growing up that without doubt weren't good at the time, but certainly made me who I was afterwards. Was there anything in your early stages in your life that kind of, do you think, made you want to help other people? What was the kind of spark for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the reason I started the nonprofit, and that was really my gateway into behavioral health too, right? So there's all these intersections of my story that overlap that, when you rattle off all the different things I've done, it's like, wow, there's a lot of things there, but there's always this like core theme underneath them all. I struggled with an eating disorder when I was in high school, pretty severely for 3.5 years, and didn't really know where to go, who to turn to, was very alone, felt very confused, very ashamed of what I was going through, and really never wanted anybody else to feel the same way, right? Like I got pretty severe because I didn't know what to do, didn't know who to talk to, didn't know where to turn. And that was really what sparked that desire to help people, right? And that's really what led me into starting the nonprofit. That's what led me into working in the behavioral healthcare field, and everything that I've done since then. And I find just so much joy, as I mentioned, helping people through their journeys, no matter how dark they are, right? And I think that's the other piece, is that sometimes people don't want to talk about what they're really struggling with underneath because they're worried about what everybody else is going to think. And I think where I've been able to be really successful in helping is that I say, you know what, listen, I've been in a dark place too, right? I know what that feels like. I know how terrible that is. And, in what I've been able to do in my professional career, walk alongside so many people and help them take those really meaningful steps has meant so much to me. And so, that's really where it started, was 18 years old, new in recovery, saying like, I just lived through torture and I don't want anybody else to experience this. So I'm going to start talking about it, and I'm going to start helping people. And that's where that started. And then I just got more and more and more involved. And, I'm one of those people, I don't just like stick my toe in the water. I just cannonball right in. And so, the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. The analogy of a cannonball there. What was your sport actually when you were being an athlete? It wasn't swimming, was it? No,
swimming. I was actually a competitive baton twirler. So I was a soloist. I actually got to travel all over the world competing, performing. I grew up in a household with competitive baton twirlers. My mom was a national champion as well. And so I started competing when I was 5, and I retired from competition, individual competition, when I was 18. And then I twirled on the competitive team and performance team for the University of Florida Gators. So that was a great way to kind of wrap up that piece of my career. And then I was Miss Florida. And so I got to compete at Miss America with the talent of baton twirling.
Cool. I'll definitely maybe talk a little bit more about that, the latter part, but I have not interviewed a champion baton thrower before, so you're unique on that. So I don't think we have too many of them in Ireland, to be honest. In
fact, I got to travel and perform in Ireland.
Oh, really?
So, wow. Yeah, I did. When I was, I think, like 17 years old. I had to come over and perform.
Very good. Yeah. So it's obviously from a early age, that mindset of competitiveness, growth mindset, pushing yourself Do you remember growing up through those phases? Obviously, your family sounds like they were quite successful and motivated and driven. Do you remember kind of coaching? I always like to think coaching moments when you're growing up. You might have had lots of coaches. I've had lots of mentors and coaches growing up, and there might have been a few sentences that have really stuck with me to kind of help me go through that next level. Things like that come up for you when you reflect back?
Oh, yeah, big time. And in fact, a lot of the things that I was fortunate enough to experience during those years, those very formative years when I was, competing, are things that I still I use with my team now. I use them with my coaching clients now. And a lot of it revolves around mindset. So it's like my own worst enemy, right? It didn't matter how talented I was, how hard I had worked, how much time I had spent in the gym, any of that. I would get in my own way when it was time to really show up and do what I needed to do. And so there was a patch there where it's like, why am I not winning, right? Like what? None of this makes sense. All of the stars are aligned. I've done the work. I've got the routines. I've got the best coaches. Everything's stacked in my favor. And yet it would be time to go out there and actually do it under pressure. And inside would just go, right? Like I was, all I could think of was all the things that weren't going to go right. I would be thinking about all of the other competitors that I was going against. I mean, I would talk myself out of winning quickly. And it was the most bizarre thing. And my coach's husband at the time had actually identified it. He's like, you take the lump, Allison, you just take the lump in your throat. You can't get past yourself. And at that point, my parents said, we need to maybe look for some other people to bring into her circle, and, worked with a mental coach, sports psychologist to really kind of train my brain, rewire how I would handle pressure. And some of the things that he taught me then have just been so incredible and have just really changed everything for me. And there's still techniques and strategies that I use to this day for myself. I use them with my team, as I mentioned, my clients, my 8-year-old daughter. Well, she's 9 today, but my 9-year-old daughter is using them too. And so it's, really exciting to see something that was such just a basic practice for me back then be something that I could carry with me for the rest of my life. And it really was just retraining my brain on what to focus on, as opposed to putting up all of the barriers and all of the things that could go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've read a good few books around that, and the term choking, I suppose, comes into mind a little bit there. Matthew Syed, I think Bounce was the name of the book. But can you give us some examples of those little tricks that you actually do? Because I'm sure people are listening, whatever they're getting anxious about, be it, baton throwing potentially, or presentations, or, whatever it is in work or professional or personal life. What are the kind of really simple hacks, I suppose, that you would recommend?
I think the simplest one that I default to are quick, short I am statements. And so for me, I would, like I mentioned, to say all the things that were going to go wrong. Like that was immediately where I would go to. So the challenge was, let's talk about all the things that are going to go right? Like I am a winner. I can do this. I have a good attitude. I have a good attitude towards others. Those are my 4, right? Those are my core 4 I am statements that I would say every single time. But the key to this is, like, it doesn't matter how cool your I am statements are, or whatever it is, you have got to condition yourself. So just as like you're conditioning your body, your mind, your presentation skills, whatever it is that you're trying to do, you're also conditioning your brain to default to this in a time when you need it most, because you can't just be like, oh yeah, I've got these cool statements and when I need them, they'll be there. It's like, no, you actually have to practice and you have to incorporate this. And so, making it, especially up front, making it part of your routine, right? So whenever you're, put under pressure, even morning, noon, night, scheduling it with yourself so that you start just knowing these and saying these, and then also leaning on these in situations, not necessarily what you've prepared those for, but whenever you feel stress or anxiety or a heightened sense of whatever it is that you're going through, go to those statements, right? Because it's absolutely impossible to say negative things to yourself at the exact same time that you're saying positive. You can't do it. Mm-hmm. Simultaneously, it's impossible. So coming up with those short statements, putting them where you need to have them. I mean, I even had my daughters put on her mouse pad, so they're right next to her computer. So like if she gets stressed, she's got them right there, right? My clients, as I work on this, I have them put sticky notes on their computer, so they're always visible, because it's got to become a habit. Otherwise, it's not going to help you. So you have to condition yourself. And, I actually had the same conversation with one of the girls on my team a couple of weeks ago. She was kind of beating herself up about her performance and where she was at. And I'm like, you know what, listen, like, you're getting in your own way right now. Like, listen to all of the things that you're saying to you. Like, first of all, if you were listening to somebody else talk about you like that, you would walk away. So you can't talk about yourself like that. Number two, let's retrain your thought process here. And instead of saying everything that is going wrong, you've got to say what's going right and what you're going to do to get there.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. No, it's good advice. And I've read recently somewhere about, we live in our own head so much of the time. It's important that you make it a nice place to be, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Feed the nice stuff in there. One thing that comes up for me there, and I know I do a lot of presentations, and I like practice. Obviously, practice makes it better. I don't say perfect, but and the dry runs and putting the time in and the effort, that's the hardest part, right? That I know I might have to do a presentation in a week's time. I might do 3 dry runs of it. That is so difficult to kind of motivate yourself to actually do. But once you do it, you come out the other side and you kind of obviously craft it and become better at it. Things like that. Do you have advice for that kind of procrastination or that resistance that people feel when they're facing a challenge, a goal, or anything that's kind of blocking them?
I think the moment that you start to feel any sense of resistance or procrastination towards anything, you need to immediately write down why. Because if you can acknowledge what is bringing this up for you, like, why don't you want to practice it? Why don't you want to do the dry run through? What is it that's making you nervous? What feelings or emotions or thoughts are creeping in? And you write those down on paper. And then you can also identify, if there's any worst case scenarios or if this would happen. So for example, if your fear is like, I'm going to forget what I'm going to say, then you would write down, okay, well, what will you do? How will you navigate that situation? And so when you put your fear on paper, first of all, you remove its power, which is great, right? So that's also very empowering, right? Mm-hmm. To say, okay, I acknowledge you. I see you. You're very real to me. And this is how I'm going to deal with you. That's really an amazing way of doing it. I have some folks that I've mentored and coached over the years that simply writing their fear or whatever's holding them back on paper and physically throwing it away or cutting it up or tearing it apart and throwing it in the trash can helps a lot too. It's like, I see you and I'm removing your power from my life. So things like that. And I think being really honest with ourselves too is, I think anytime you're forced outside of your comfort zone or you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone intentionally because you want to grow, it's going to be uncomfortable. And so there's a certain point where you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Because we can stay and we can stay in the same place and make no strides whatsoever. But then what's the point of life, right? Like, we're supposed to evolve. We're supposed to continue to get better. We're supposed to level up, all of these wonderful things, but it's not going to happen if you're always comfortable. And so, working through that, having that routine for yourself too. Okay. Like, I'm feeling this is why, and this is what I'm going to do in this situation. Sometimes is just enough to say, okay, I can handle this. Let's go. So that's, and sometimes you just have to incentivize yourself too. I've had clients that have done that too. They're like, if I practice 3 times, I get to do X, Y, Z, whatever it is, Mm-hmm. So you just have to know what's motivating you and where it's coming from.
Yeah, no, that definitely, I think the incentivizing one is also very, very important for some, because people might be intrinsically motivated or extrinsically if they want to give themselves something tangible as a reward. You mentioned early on in the conversation about feedback, and that's something I always like to kind of dig into a little bit, because a lot of people that listen might be managers or leaders and have to, from time to time and hopefully on a regular basis give feedback to their team members and employees. What approaches do you recommend that you think have the most impact for meaningful feedback, delivering the difficult messages? Just interested to hear your perspectives on that.
Mm-hmm. So feedback for me is most effective if it's early on, right? So if something has just happened that needs to be addressed, you got to nip it right away. That's one of the biggest things that I see people do, is because they don't want to have uncomfortable conversations and they sit on it, and then it's not in the moment. It doesn't have the same type of coaching value if you sit on something for too long, because the person now has moved past it, right? They might not have even realized what they did wasn't what needed to be done. And it's really hard for them to relate back. Whereas if it's in the moment, or it's as fast as you possibly can give it, do it and move on. Frequency of feedback is really important, good and bad. So, we have a pretty structured process at work at Advanced Recovery Systems with my team. Like, we have weekly one-on-ones with our team members every Monday. You're going to have a one-on-one, and it's up to that employee to fill out their feedback form, right? They have to fill out what were the results of the week, what do they need from their supervisor and their manager, and it's up to the manager to be prepared to have conversations and address their needs, but then to also have an agenda of items that need to be discussed in ways in which that employee can continue to move forward and advance and do better in their position. So you've got to be organized with it. You've got to be on top of it, and you can't miss moments, because I guarantee you, if you see something and you don't say something about an action or a behavior or something that could be better, you'll be regretting that in the future, because it probably will repeat itself, or, later on when you're like, oh, I could have corrected this if I would have just, had the guts to have that uncomfortable conversation. But it's important. And I think when you come at it from the intention of like, I'm giving you this feedback because you're amazing and I want you to be the best you possibly can be, it allows them to not feel so on edge, and that they're in a position where their job is at risk, or, they're not good enough. It's like, no, this person really does genuinely care about me and how I'm doing in this role. And so that is so ingrained in our culture. And, we want people that want to grow, right? Like, I'm not interested in hiring a bunch of team members that don't want to continue to get better every single day, that don't want to take advantages of opportunities. We pour so much into our team that you have to be someone who's receptive to coaching to even make it to the second round of our interview process, right? Like, we screen them out. If you're not interested in constantly developing and evolving, it's just not going to be a good fit, right? So that's a big part of it too, is getting the right people on your bus, right, or on your team, and then making sure that you're delivering that feedback so they can continue to be on that seat on the bus or move up on the bus, however you want to position it, but to continue to have opportunities to grow and learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the positive intent, I think, is extremely important when you're giving feedback, that you're not trying to chastise the person. You're actually trying to make them improve. And if you start with that, it sets the tone for the rest of the conversation. And, even if you are giving constructive or whatever you want to term the not so positive stuff, at least if you start with positive intent around, to your point, around the why you're giving it, I think that makes certainly a difference, right? So absolutely. As a leader of a team, and we have got to maybe 21 minutes and not talked about COVID, right? So that's probably been good. But as things have evolved over the last 10 months or so, and I presume in your role in your organization, it's heavily remote. And how has that challenged you, I suppose, as a coach and as a leader, and when you're doing a lot more of this work, virtually and in a remote setting?
It was a challenge, right? So I have, 40 team members, all of which were very used to being in the field and seeing people that intentionally did not sign up for office jobs, right? So that has been a challenge. We had a quick pivot. We moved swiftly to get them all of the tools that they would need to be efficient at home. We immediately looked at metrics, because field metrics versus at-home metrics are very different. And we outlined them and made them pretty clear, right? So that they knew how they were going to be successful and supported through the uncertain time, and that we were going to continue to tweak and evaluate and update. And there were times where we missed, right? Like at one point, metrics were really aggressive. I thought they were way too high, and we pulled back, right? We realized, we listened and we reacted. And so, we are very open with our people and with our team, and we are constantly asking for feedback. And that's just my leadership style. Like, I want to hear from my team. I want them to know that their voices are heard. I will take all of it. I will evaluate it. I will consult with my leadership team, and then we'll make decisions that are in the best interest of my team and of the company that allow us to get the results that we need to get. Right. So, they were amazing. And honestly, like, I am still just in awe of all of them and how resilient they were, as, they're all going through things personally, as all of us are and were. They were champions, and they never lost sight of what we were doing or who we were doing it for or what our purpose was. And they showed up every single day willing to help people that needed us most. And it was a beautiful experience, despite how stressful it was for everybody, to watch people really grow. I watched leaders become exceptional leaders during this time. I watched, junior team members really evolve and show their true colors and, what they were capable of. And now they're advancing within the organization. And, we really came together as a unit. Mm-hmm. We were always close, right? We always have had a really great working relationship, and I've got team members. Our organization is not that old. I'm actually the longest tenured employee. I've been there 8 years. But I've got team members that have been with me for almost 6.5 years at this point. So we've worked with each other closely for a long time, and to see them even grow and change and step into it and not allow the fear of uncertainty stop them from leaning into the situation, which I really, really appreciated. And I needed that. I needed that from them, and they needed me to be there for them too, but it was incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the disruption from the pandemic has certainly brought out the great leaders and exposed those that aren't so good, right? That haven't been able to adapt and adjust and be resilient and kind of figure out ways to motivate and keep the team members engaged. And on that point, was there only one or two things that you did differently in that remote setting to kind of keep people close together, keep that kind of sense of community, sense of tribe going? Anything that worked well or that you've tried and failed on?
So a few different things. Like, it did give us, there were a couple opportunities for us actually. So, we were going from doing like bi-weekly mini team meetings. So we have our one-on-ones, big team meeting, but then we were doing like every other week. So we were doing just the smaller breakout team meetings. We made those every week because people needed connection, right? Like, that was the big piece that was missing for so many of them. And so that helped a lot. There were requests for just like mindful moments. So once a week we have, an optional mindful moments break meditation. They can come on. It's guided by one of our team members. The good thing is we work in behavioral health, so we have a lot of therapists around, right? So that we can bring in and help. And so that works to our benefit. So we did that, and that's been greatly appreciated. We've tried to do other just fun things too, like different contests and incentives. Like we have limitations, right? Being in healthcare, we can't do a lot of we obviously no commission, none of that, right? But we could do like fun things that, incentivize activities and, finding new accounts and things. So we tried to get really creative with like what else we could do to keep people motivated. But it was just really important, again, to listen. Like, what they were asking for back in March was different than what they were asking for in October. But again, just having them feel like they could come to us and say, we need this, right? So that was really important to us and something that we continue to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, listening is a common theme coming up, right? And it's one of the things that we can do that costs absolutely nothing, but probably doesn't get done in the right proportion, I think. I'd like to just take it back just a little bit for a minute, and just, you mentioned about being Miss Florida. I think, was it 2006 or around then? When was
it? 2006. 15-year anniversary this year. Like, my gosh.
I did my research there. I remembered. But that as an experience, I suppose, what did you learn from that? Was it something you had ambitions for, or did you fall into it, and then just the experience and what you took from that made you improve?
Yeah, so that was an incredible experience. And I think, for the general public that just sees the final night on television, there's not a lot of context into what goes into it. And, I didn't grow up competing in pageants. As we talked about, I was a competitive athlete. That was very much my full focus. I didn't start competing until I was in college, and I did it once, right? So I made it to state my first year, and I fell in love. Like, I knew I wanted to come back. I knew I wanted to be it, and I was willing to do the work. So I competed for 3 years. That third year, I kind of slipped back in placement where I ended up. The first 2 years I was in the top 10. I'm like, okay, I'm working my way. I'm going to get there, right? Third year I come back. I'm like, this is my year. I'm going to make the 5. I didn't make the 5. I actually only made the 15 that year. And I was like, you know what? Something's off with me. And I took a year off. And I said, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I need to come back and be me, because I felt like I had really just become everything that everybody else wanted me to be. And I wasn't being true to who I was. And why was I doing this? Right. So kind of checked myself, right. got back in the right space, came back in 2006, and I won the whole thing. And that was great. It was a very interesting year, actually. The year that I won at state, there were 11 of us out of 40 that got severe food poisoning during competition week and were hospitalized, the whole 9 yards. And so it just kind of threw the whole thing upside down, and talk about an emotional roller coaster, but having to be super mentally strong and focused to be able to get through that, because I could have thrown in the towel, right? And been like, this wasn't my year. It's just not going to happen. Dream over, done. But that wasn't what I did. And so glad I just pushed through, and it all kind of came together. But that year is a year of service, right? So you can't work, you can't go to school, you can't do anything else. This is your job for the year. And so it was amazing. I mean, I from the moment I was crowned, the entire year, I looked at it as a dream job with an expiration date. It was such a blessing. I had so many incredible opportunities and was able to build such a phenomenal network of supporters and people that I respect and trust, and I still consider dear friends, and that I lean on and call regularly. And, real sisterhood too, with all of the young women that I competed with. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And they say, the stat in the US anyways is, you're I think it's 10 times more likely to have a son play in the Super Bowl or play in the NFL than to have a daughter compete at Miss America. And so it is a huge honor, and something that I'm extremely grateful for, and continue to stay involved with the organization ever since. And I'm very involved, support it. I run the foundation side of it, so the scholarship arm for the organization, and just really appreciate and will be forever grateful for having that experience.
Very interesting. Yeah, we don't have something like that. Obviously, there's Miss World, but in Ireland, we have it's called the Rose of Tralee. It's a totally similar event, and there's roses from all over the world that have Irish connections. So there's the Florida rose, there's the Las Vegas rose, there's the Singapore rose, then there's lots of Irish roses. You should look it up. I'm not going to do a whole Rose of Tralee.
I will be Googling very soon.
but like that, the winner for the year is a year of service as well, and they go traveling everywhere and promote it, and give it a lot of exposure for them. And you see a lot of those that have won go on to have very successful careers in lots of different ways, and it keeps them in the media. Has it had an impact, do you think, on your career afterwards? Have you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and I think because I was able to have this accelerated experience, right? It's almost like packing 5 years into one. With, I did 250 appearances, right? I spoke at almost all of them. I traveled 80,000 miles. I got to do a lot of really cool things. And one of the best things about being Miss Florida or any title holder is that it amplifies your microphone, right? It gives you a pedestal or a platform to speak upon and to share your message. And for me, my passion was eating disorders. That was a struggle I had already gone through. That was what I was championing during that year. And it absolutely, one of the women that booked me to speak when I was Miss Florida actually ended up being my first boss. And so, just the small world of like how that connection came to be. And then, so many additional professional opportunities came my way because of, maybe not because I was Miss Florida, but because I possessed a skill set at a young age that not a lot of others did. Right. And so that was something that set me apart. You figure I was 23 years old, 24 when I was done. And I had all of these experiences and I had been able to go and do so many incredible things. It gave me a chance to build upon that. Right. And so that was, I think, really what I was so grateful for. And that network was just priceless.
Yeah, no, I can obviously know from talking to you and your motivations that you, not in a kind of a using way, you didn't use it to give you that extra platform. You obviously did it because you wanted to do it, but that was an ancillary benefit of it, right? It puts you, it's like you mentioned, what came into mind is like an MBA effectively in a year, giving you that business exposure, the ability to present, honing those skills. You really put it to the advantage. Yeah.
Right. Well, and you learn so much too. I mean, I think, I've actually hired several other title holders now that work for me. And so, I look at them and I know that they understand what it means to represent an organization that's larger than themselves. They understand what having a polished and professional brand means. They understand what it means to have to show up and do your job, whether you feel like it or not that day, right? Like they understand it. And it's something that you learn through that experience. You can learn it through a lot of different experiences as well. But for me in particular, it was an incredible training ground to be able to hone those skills, as you mentioned, and to then be able to leverage them in a professional capacity. And so many people say, I mean, this as being a coach, I'm sure you hear it all the time. People's biggest fear is public speaking, right? Like they would rather do a lot of other things than speak in public. And that became something that I loved doing. And I was able to share my story and propel something and a cause and a mission forward that I cared deeply about. And that's ultimately where I ended up going in my professional career was, having all of those experiences as Miss Florida opened a lot of doors for me when it came to behavioral health care and continuing to be able to help people just in a different capacity. And so it was a really special entry point for me.
No, cool. Good to hear that. We're coming up with about 5 or 6 minutes left. So just some wrap up ones that I like to kind of dig into your own practice. Right? You're a very positive person. And high energy and a lot of good motivation going on there. We all have bad days, right? So what do you do when you have a bad day? How do you kind of flip that out, or do you just accept it? It's a bad day. It's okay.
Well, I mean, I think we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace, right? But I'm such a creature of habit and I've got so many different things that I lean on to try to snap out of it, because I can't allow one 30-minute Zoom meeting during my day to throw my entire day off, right? Like I have to be on, right? My team needs me to be on. If I'm off, they feel it, right? So if I'm really off, I need to take the day off, right? And just allow myself to rest. And if I get to that point, it's probably because I haven't been filling up my cup the way that I need to. And that's on me. Like I have to own that. But a lot of it comes down to my routine, right? So I have to stay married to my routine. And this is actually a very relevant conversation because I actually got sick last week and my routine was off, right? And it was so interesting because like yesterday I was like, okay, I feel so much better. I'm going to get back on my normal wake up time, which I get up at 4:30 in the morning. Like I love my mornings. That's my me time. That's when I get to do things I just love doing. And then I'm lit up and ready to take on the day. And it actually took me I wasn't able to get up at 4:30 yesterday morning. I was like, it's amazing how after 5 days of being sick and out of commission that, my body was just like, nope, we like this. So, today I gave myself a little grace. I was like, I'm going to do 5 o'clock, and I was able to do it. And I was up and I'm like, okay, tomorrow will be 4:45. Right. So it's just about staying on a schedule and being really, really committed to taking care of yourself first, right? There's that analogy of, you hear it all the time about, when you get on an airplane, they tell you put your oxygen mask on first before you put the person next to you, till you take care of them. You have to do that with life, right? And I think it's so easy to shortchange ourselves because for so many, and I'm sure so many of your listeners, we're givers, we're doers, we want to help people, right? We want to help transform. and we just pour into everybody else. We have to pour into ourselves, and we have to do things that light our souls on fire, and we have to find moments of intentional joy and ways to get ourselves back on track. So like one of the things, I mean, I'm remote right now. I'm not used to being remote, right? Like again, I was out in the field. But even now, if I find myself getting stressed, like get up and go take a walk, right? 5 minutes makes a big difference than just sitting and stewing in frustration, right? Changing your scenery, listening to something. Like I've got certain songs that'll help me get right back to it, or podcasts where I'm just, I just needed a few minutes of that, but positivity that helps get me back on track. So you just have to have your tools in your toolbox that you can lean on and then use them, right? Like life is stressful. The day is stressful. Not everything is going to go the way that you want it to go. So know what you need to do to keep yourself in a good space and place, because this is your life, right? You don't want to constantly feel stressed or overwhelmed or upset. And, if you really do get to a point where you need a day, take a day. Yeah. Take a day and don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, no, very good advice. And you get up 45 minutes earlier than I do. I'm 5:15. I've landed on that for a few years now, and I'm pretty religious with that. The days I don't get up at 5:15 are tend to be bad days, right? I kind of feel like that. We have a 2-year-old, so I kind of get 90 minutes of me time in before everybody else comes around. And but the days I even slip, or maybe say I'll have a lie-in on a Saturday or a Sunday, and I don't really enjoy it, it just doesn't feel right. But like that, and when you are feeling sick or whatever is coming over you, I just tend to go to bed now and sleep, because that's the best place for me and for everybody else that knows me, just to keep me out of trouble and not, bring other people down with me, sort of thing. So, very true. I'll ask one more and then I'll just get some info on your podcast, but time management and how you slice up the day to get things done. I've talked to people on this that do it in lots of different ways, and it's always interesting. So how do you manage your time to be productive?
So I time block like crazy, and I am religious about my schedule. So I have to put, because it's very easy, right, to allow other people to soak up time on your calendar, and then you not have any time for you to actually be able to do what you need to do on your end. And I was noticing that, right, especially now, right, like before, meetings, fine, you had time in between meetings, like maybe you're driving, maybe you weren't, maybe they were on the phone, but they were never really on Zoom. Like we barely used Zoom before all of this. Now, like every meeting is on Zoom or Teams, and I'm, from 8 to 5. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a long day. But I had to put blocks of time for me to be able to get caught up. I had to put blocks of time in for me to be able to, knock out projects. I had to be very religious about turning off any disruptors, any interruption devices, or, tools like we use Slack. That little chime can knock you off course real fast, or even Outlook notifications, right? So if I'm going into a period of time in which I need to have an outcome at the end or result, everything's getting shut off. And everybody knows I'm on do not disturb. Like, do not. I'm not going to answer. Don't even try. So, but it's really important to have boundaries too, because it's really easy to turn over the keys to the calendar and unknowingly. I do time audits. So if I ever feel like I'm losing control of my schedule, or I'm not having the type of output that I need to have and the projects aren't getting done, I color code my calendar. I use a Outlook calendar. So if it gets done, it turns green. If it doesn't get done, it turns red. And there I can see, like, are there any trends here? Are there things that, like, in the middle of my day is nothing getting done because other things have leaked in? Okay, well, that means next week I need to schedule those tasks to happen earlier in the day. I'm a big fan of eating the frog first, right? So do the thing you don't want to do first, knock it out, get it done, because otherwise it becomes that procrastination item that just keeps moving to the next day, and very list-based. So I try to keep everything as organized as possible. Everything for me pretty much rolls up into a goal or an initiative that I'm working on. And then there's tasks, right, that come up that I can't avoid. But, everything is working towards something. So it's really easy for me to also look at the 30,000 foot view and say, okay, where am I now in relation to where I'm headed, right? And what else do I need to knock out in order to get there? So I also evaluate that. I'll take a snapshot at that. I'll look at that once a week and say, okay, here's where I need to be next week at this time, and just keep working towards it and plugging in my time first, like always scheduling my time first. Because if I turn over my week to somebody else, they don't get filled up. Right. And, that's really, it's a blessing and a curse when people are like, oh, is your calendar up to date? Yes, it is. Okay. Now I'll go, all the empty slots are gone. Yeah. But it's also really important to block that. Mm-hmm. So that's just one thing. Block your time, get it done, do a time audit, and turn off all distractions so that you can get it done.
Yeah, no, I like the color code everything as well. But I like the way you say if you can see the red trend on a certain point on the day, every day over a period of a couple of weeks, you're highlighting an issue then, right? That needs to be addressed. So yeah, that's cool. Yep. No, very very interesting, and time always flies when it's an interesting conversation. So Allison, maybe just wrap up on about your podcast. I know I think I was checking, you've about 25 episodes or so done. You do typically one a week. I would say their conversations are probably not too dissimilar to what we've just had, I would imagine. Maybe just share some learnings from that, what you're getting out of it, anything else that you'd like to highlight on it.
Yeah, thank you. I started the She Believed She Could podcast during the pandemic. It was actually towards the end of March where I was going, something's got to give here. I need to find some intentional joy in my days and focus on some good and something rising to keep me going, right? We talked about having to pour a lot into others, and I needed to find something that was really going to lift me up. And so I came up with the podcast and started really focusing on amazing women who were doing great things in the world and sharing their stories. What was very interesting was also talking to them throughout the pandemic about how they had to pivot or change, what they thought was going to be their year ended up changing mid-year, and how they were working through that. I also feature a lot of young women who are under 25, who are absolutely crushing the game and are just really inspiring young women that have figured out a lot at a very early age in life. And then scattered throughout those spotlights are episodes that are helpful when it comes to time management or mindset or, really keeping yourself focused on your goals. I'm a huge fan of goal setting. And so I do focus a lot of energy, at least once a quarter, there's an episode about your goals and where you are in relation to where you want to be and what you can do to get there. So I've absolutely loved it. I wasn't sure, you kind of start something and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to love this or not. I've totally fallen in love, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. I know you love what you do too, but it's become something very special to me.
No, cool. Yeah, no, definitely. I think once you get into a stride with it and you don't take it too seriously either, right? You have a day job, I have a day job. This is a passion project, but it, like what you said, for me, I've done this for 4 years now, and I've learned and developed how to interview people and effectively ask hopefully decent questions that, you can bring to your coaching work. And there's so many unplanned benefits that come out of it. So I just encourage people to not only listen, but also, give it a go and try something different out, right? So that's always a good way of learning, and jumping outside the fear is good. So I know you have to go for another call as well. It was great talking with you. Thanks so much for sharing everything you have. I've taken some interesting takeaways, and hopefully those that have listened have as well. Anything to wrap up, how folks can find you online as well?
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Instagram. That's been another passion project of mine over the last several months. So at Allison Walsh Consulting. And certainly on the healthcare side of things, if anybody's interested or needs help or wants guidance on how to help somebody else, Allison Walsh at advancedrecoverysystems.com. And you can reach out to me if there's anybody that needs assistance. But we're always here to help and ultimately just take care of yourself, right? Like, I think that's the overarching message is listen to you, listen to what you need to do at this point in your life, and invest in yourself and take care of you. So I think that's the final word from me today. But continue to strive to be that 1% each and every day, 1% better. It compounds, right? Consistency compounds, and you'll be so happy with the result.
Absolutely. Nice way to end it, Allison. Thanks again so much. Look forward to putting this out very soon. And look after yourself as well. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Rob. Bye.
Take care. Hey folks, thanks so much for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, could you please consider helping me extend the reach of the podcast that a little bit further? You can do that in a number of ways. The number one way is to subscribe on your app of choice. This helps me with the chart ranking, leading to more folks stumbling across the podcast and checking it out. You could also repost it on your social media channels. Any of them would be great. And maybe even tell a friend in person or over the phone. Pick up the phone, give them a call and tell them about the 1% Better podcast. Tell them about this episode or one that you've heard in the past. Any will do. I would really appreciate it. In the last year, we set up a 1% Better Slack community, which you can join for free and interact with me and other members of the community and improve through holding each other accountable and sharing monthly challenges. It's a lot of fun. Check it out. I'm into season 4 of this incredible journey, and the more of these interviews and solo shows that I research, record and share, the better I believe that they get, and more loaded with actionable takeaways that you can learn from. I know I've learned so much from it so far, and it's always really, really fulfilling and rewarding when I hear from you on what you took from it. So do reach out, rob@robofthegreen.ie. And of everybody that listens, 90% listen and enjoy, but only around 10% actually take action, write down takeaways and put them into practice. I am convinced that if we can move that number a bit higher, the listeners will not only make steps forward towards their goals, but they will be more fulfilled and happy and better. Change doesn't happen overnight. It is hard, but it's all about taking the first step, whatever that is for you. You can absolutely do this. Make a plan, be deliberate, take action. Don't overreach. Start with those small incremental improvements, and over time you will see great progress. It's all in the pursuit of betterness. So again, thank you so much for listening. Good luck and stay safe.